Is it possible that some people may have a peculiar psychic makeup which allows them to enter the boundaries between this plane of reality and other dimensions? Do these people possess an ability that enables them to travel to other realms that is unreachable to most people? These people who have had the experiences may always wonder whether or not they had some kind of psychic experience, or whether their physical bodies somehow managed to pass into another dimension. For other individuals, they were left with undeniable physical evidence that they had been confronted with some force beyond the grasp of orthodox science. Whether there truly are holes and doorways between dimensions of reality, whether there may be beings from other planes who may abduct unsuspecting men and women and send them spinning into another space-time continuum, remains among the many challenges to be explored in these encounters with time and space. The following are two stories of interdimensional travel that will have you asking the question, is everything you perceive in life really as it appears? Number 2, Cornelio Closer, Philippines, 1953. In 1953, a schoolboy from Manila in the Philippines was seen by many to disappear from closed rooms, then incredibly to reappear in another section of the city. The strange, terrifying experiences began for Cornelio in September of 1951 when he was a 6th grader at the Zamora Elementary School. One day, he met a young girl dressed in white with long blonde hair. She was barefooted, about Cornelio's age, but the boy noticed she floated rather than walked when she moved beside him. Although the girl did not open her smiling lips, Cornelio was able to hear and understand what she said. And when she touched his hand, he felt different, very light. He became aware of his surroundings. The young girl came often. Cornelio remembered that the things around him looked real and natural, but somehow he had the feeling that he was no longer real. Cornelio said that there were many times when the girl and I would float around and go to many places in the city. We went many times to movie houses and visited the international fair that was being held in the city. When I was with her, I didn't feel exhausted or hungry. The strangest thing Cornelio recalled was that nobody seemed to notice them. Soon Cornelio's schoolteacher complained to his parents that he had been skipping school. His father decided to escort him to school to ensure that he got there, but that did not prevent the ethereal girl from taking the boy away from his classroom. The girl would appear before him in school. She would hold out her hand, and Cornelio would feel some sensation. Then there would be no other thought in his mind but to go with her. Even with the door closed, Cornelio remembered I was able to go through it, just walk through it as if it were open. Then I would hear my classmates shouting, "Cornelio is gone!" But he wasn't just disappearing from school. At home, the Closer family would lock all the doors and windows, but to no avail. He kept on seeing the girl and was able to go out with her despite the closed doors. Cornelio said sometimes I would be gone as long as 3 days, although I had no knowledge of how long I had been away. Finally, his despairing parents sent Cornelio to a mental institution, then to a welfare institution. Authorities said that he was a normal boy who would be better off living with his parents, so Cornelio was sent home. Eventually, Cornelio's bizarre adventures came to an end, but we are still left with the great mystery of who was this girl and why did this happen. You would think that his experiences could be written off as nothing more than a schoolboy's blonde girl fantasy and an adolescent's imagination if it were not for the fact that he really did disappear from closed classrooms, surrounded by classmates and teachers, and locked doors and windows, ringed in by members of his family. Number 1. Miriam Golding, Chicago, 1934. Miriam had an experience which occurred to her in the autumn of 1934 when she stepped out of an elevator into another plane of existence. Miriam and her fiancé were in a crowded elevator in a Chicago music store when she inadvertently got off at the wrong floor and could not push her way back into the crowded elevator. Miriam then waited for the elevator to return. She then looked around her and was astonished to see that she was not in a downtown music store at all, but a large railroad station. She just watched in total amazement as crowds of travellers hurried about. Railroad announcers gave times of departures and arrivals. People bought tickets, grabbed sandwiches and snacks from lunch counters and sitting in waiting rooms. Miriam approached the information booth but seemed to be completely ignored after repeated inquiries. Miriam then noticed a street sign and followed its direction out into the open air where it was a beautiful midsummer afternoon. There she observed a new red brick building being constructed across the street from the station. Crowds of people jostled by on the street, and she had no idea where she was, and at the same time she felt totally invisible as nobody seemed to notice her. She wandered aimlessly for several minutes until she noticed a teenage boy standing near the centre of the sidewalk, staring in all directions. She approached the teenager, hoping to communicate with him. Fortunately, he noticed her and smiled. "I guess they let you off at the wrong stop too." Miriam immediately understood what had happened, as the same thing had happened to both of them. Realising that they were both in the same predicament, they joined up and proceeded to walk down the broad avenue. The boy explained that he'd been playing tennis in Lincoln, Nebraska. He'd gone into the locker room to change his shoes, and when he came back out to the courts, he found himself in that same railroad depot. What strange force could transport a tennis player from Lincoln and a shopper from Chicago to the same unknown train station? After walking a short distance, they found themselves in the open country, where to Miriam's astonishment saw her fiancé's sister on a sandbar with a number of other girls. They noticed her too, and they began to call her name and wave at her. They both then attempted to get across the sandbar, which only appeared a short distance. The figures of the girls remained on the sandbar, but found they could get no nearer to the girls and the hoped-for link between their worlds. Exhausted, they returned to shore and fell into the sand, feeling discouraged. When they looked again at the sandbar, it had disappeared. Feeling totally despondent, Miriam felt she would be forever trapped in this other plane of existence. Suddenly, she became enveloped in darkness and felt as if she were floating through space. With a jolt, she found herself on a stool in the music store with a magazine spread out before her. A clock was signalling closing time, and the clerks were directing people out of the store. Miriam looked about for her fiancé, but she could not see him. She decided to go directly to his home, but this time she would take the stairs and avoid the elevator. When she got to her destination, her fiancé opened the door looking relieved. He said he'd lost her on the elevator. After stepping out onto the main floor, he had been unable to locate her. Thinking she had gotten off on some other floor, he had waited for a while, then decided to go home. As Miriam entered the home, she was surprised to see her fiancé's sister with the same friends she had seen on the sandbar. The sister smiled and teased her that she had seen her in town, but said, "You were so engrossed in each other, you didn't even hear us." Where had Miriam Golding been during those strange hours away from conventional reality? And what distortion of time and space made downtown Chicago appear to be a river and a sandbar? How had the girls been able to serve as a kind of link between dimensions so that at least some kind of communication had been established. Even though false, they had seen her with a fiancé rather than a teenage boy. She saw them on a sandbar rather than the crowded Chicago street.